Okay, shall we get going then? It's 1 o'clock. Thank you. I know a lot of people are still coming in. We've got 50 odd people here, so we'll probably see those numbers go up in the next few minutes as we come in. It's my pleasure to introduce Alice and Stephen to you all this afternoon, who have come along to do the third of our webinars in this series. So Alice is a product developer of learning design, and she's co-chair of the Disability Accessibility and Wellbeing Network at Arden University. And she's a specialist in bringing lived experience into design spaces through communities of practice. She's a member of the ALT Special Interest Group, as is Stephen, who is from Regent's University, and he runs the Neurodiversity Network. So guys, hand it over to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for all joining us today as well. So I will introduce myself as we go through, and there's a point as well where I will be handing over to Stephen to talk a little bit more about his experiences. So I will get kicked off, but I just wanted to say welcome and thank you for joining us. So today we're going to be talking about digital wellbeing for neurodivergent staff in higher education. We're going to be looking at how digital environments and things like inboxes and platforms and notifications and online meetings shape how well we can focus and how we can feel at work as well. So for neurodivergent colleagues especially, digital overload can create lots of barriers that are often invisible. And the aim of today is to just give you some practical strategies that you can use for yourself or with your colleagues, and to explore what teams can do to make digital work feel more supportive as well. And it just feels quite a prevalent topic in January as well, really, because as you may have heard of Blue Monday and mental health and wellbeing being something that's quite talked about in January, as it's harder to manage in the winter months. So it can be difficult for all of us, and hopefully today can just be a bit of a reminder for us to take care of ourselves and others, and our digital wellbeing throughout the year. So I'll just sort of, before we get into things properly, I'll just do a quick accessibility check that you can hear me, and just as a reminder that you can access the captions as well. So you should be able to click on a more actions option, which looks like 3 dots in your meeting controls. And then there should be an option for you to select captions there if you need them. I also just want to invite you as well to do just a short reset moment. So I always try and start my sessions like this. Just a chance to reset. Our jobs are very demanding. We spend a lot of time in meetings, lots of screen time. So to really enjoy the session, I think it's important to just take a moment to pause. So if you're able to, just take a moment, stretch, look away from the screen, or you can close your eyes. You could take a sip of your drink, take a couple of slow breaths. All of these resources and a recording will be sent to you afterwards as well. So you've got permission to just listen if you'd like to as well. So I'll just stop for a few seconds or so for us to do that. So here is what we will be covering today. I will give you a quick introduction to who I am, and I'll start with why this topic matters. And then we'll look at digital wellbeing challenges and neurodivergent colleagues that neurodivergent colleagues often experience. Then I will be handing over to Stephen, who will be introducing himself, and we're really fortunate to hear his lived experience in this area and the work that he does as well. After that, I'll talk through some practical strategies, and we'll finish with what teams can do to help too. So throughout the session, I will give a few real-world examples that people have shared with me, or things that I experienced myself, because often that helps us to just put things into context and to see them in the real world. And just to say as well, I've got some notes on my screen, so I will try to keep to time, because that's something that helps me. So I might not be able to keep up with the chat, but Stephen has kindly offered to have a look through the chat if anything comes up. But we would like, if you have got any questions, to go into the Q&A so that we don't miss them as the chat comes through. But there will be time for discussion at the end as well. So, who am I? Well, my name's Alice Chapman. I'm a product developer in the learning design team at Arden University. As Julian's mentioned, I also co-chair the Arden's Disability Accessibility and Wellbeing colleague network. and I serve as a Digital Accessibility Officer for the SIG as well. My main area of work is around accessibility and inclusive design in digital learning content. And I'm particularly passionate about working with communities of practice to embed lived experience into how we design our content and processes as well. I also identify as disabled myself, and I have a number of different conditions that I manage, including ADHD. And there is just a picture of me up on this slide with my main work colleague, which is Nelson, the dog, who is my dog. And he keeps me in check as I do work mainly from home. So why does this topic matter? Well, many staff in higher education are neurodivergent, whether formally diagnosed or not. At the same time, HE is a high demand digital environment. So most of us juggle multiple platforms, high volumes of communication, frequent context switching, and long days of online meetings. And that can really affect your productivity, but it also directly affects your well-being. So a colleague told me that on an average day, they will receive messages across 4 different platforms. And that's just related to work communication. So even if they only open half of them, their attention has already switched multiple times. And by lunchtime, they feel exhausted. So it's not because the work is too difficult, but because of the constant digital noise. So this is why digital wellbeing is really part of an accessibility issue. It's not a personal failing, but many people feel that they have to mask at work to try to overcome barriers. So myself and Stephen actually met last week to have a little chat ahead of this session, and we discussed a couple of quotes which we wanted to share with you. So the first quote that we have looks at this, the invisibility piece that we've just talked about. So something that Devin Price talks about in Unmasking Autism, and they describe how some people spend decades believing they're just shy or highly sensitive because they've learned to hide their autistic traits. And the cost of that masking is often exhaustion, confusion. It could be a sense that something is wrong, even when nothing is. So I'll just read that quote out from the screen for you. The people with so-called female autism may be able to make eye contact, carry on a conversation, or hide their tics and sensory sensitivities. They might spend the first few decades of their lives with no idea they're autistic at all, believing instead that they're just shy or highly sensitive. So looking a bit more at the strengths of neurodivergence here. So neurodivergence can include things like ADHD, autism, dyslexia and dyspraxia, dyscalculia. It could be sensory processing differences as well, things like Tourette's. But what matters really is that neurodivergent colleagues bring huge strengths to higher education. So things like pattern recognition or creativity, it could be deep focus, persistence as well, and the ability to connect ideas across disciplines and areas. So one of my friends said to me that if you find a problem that no one knows how to solve, then I'm there. But if you give me 40 or 50 small tasks in 7 different systems, then my brain will just shut down almost immediately. I think that really shows that the issue isn't about a person's capability, but the environment that we work in, and that we're asking people to work in too. So Devin Price also talks about the double bind that many neurodivergent people experience. So Devin is talking about autism here in this instance, but it's just as relevant for other neurodivergence too. Again, I'll just read the quote out for you. So many masked autistics are sent to gifted education as children instead of being referred to disability services. Our apparent high intelligence puts us in a double bind. We are expected to accomplish great things to justify our oddness. And because we possess an enviable socially prized quality, it's assumed we need less help than other people, not more. So when someone is seen as capable or gifted, it's often assumed that they don't need support, but in reality, the pressure can increase, not decrease. High expectations without the right support can quietly lead to burnout as well. So looking now at those challenges, neurodivergent colleagues often describe 5 key digital challenges. And rather than just read them out, I thought I would describe them in a day in the life so that you can get a picture of what that might feel like, and it might resonate with you as well. So a colleague will start their day with a clear intention. They have blocked out the morning to work on one important piece of writing. They open their laptop, and before they even started, notifications begin to appear. So an email arrives, then a Teams message, then a calendar reminder pops up for a meeting that's later in the day. And each one of these will pull their attention away, and it may just be for a second, but it keeps happening. So they finally try to begin the task, but first they need a document. They can't remember if it was shared in an email, uploaded to Teams, or if it was saved elsewhere. They open a few tabs, then a few more, and then it already feels like more effort than it should be. As they work, the screen feels busy, there's bright panels, there's sidebars, there's alerts and unread badges, and it's not loud, but it is constant. And their eyes start to feel really tired, and it's harder to stay settled. So halfway through a paragraph, they stop again. They can't quite remember the exact link that they need or what the next step was supposed to be. So they scroll back, they open another tab and try to hold it all in their mind at once. Then something will click and they fall into a deep focus. So time just completely disappears. They work really intensely without any breaks until they suddenly realize that they're exhausted, they're dehydrated, and they are late for their next meeting. The work got done, but it came at a cost. And none of this was about ability or motivation. It was about how the digital environment asked their brain to work. So in that little story, you'll have been able to pull out their notification overload, cognitive overload and decision fatigue, sensory strain, working memory strain with ecosystems, and hyperfocus cycles as well. And I'm just going to pause for a moment just to ask you to think about your own digital day. You don't have to share this, but it's just to reflect for a moment and whether this, which of these really feels most draining to you now, whether it's notifications or could be switching between different systems, lots of video meetings, or sensory overload. And just have a little think about that and maybe write it down. And if something does immediately jump out to you, then that's usually a bit of a clue as to where you might find things to be the most overwhelming for you. And what I'm going to do now is, I think this feels like a really good moment to hand over to Stephen, who's going to introduce himself and share a bit more about his experiences in these different spaces too. So, Stephen, I'll just hand over to you.
Thank you. In the chat, somebody's asked if you'd be able to write out what it was that you said as your description, so people can use that for themselves going forward. I think that's a really good idea.
Yes, definitely.
So I'll just share my screen very quickly just to show you who I am. So my name's Stephen Taylor. I am the Learning Technology Lead at Regent's University in London. And I lead the Neurodiversity Network at Regent's, where we're trying to help people understand neurodiversity, understand their neurodiverse loved ones and the people who they work with, as well as come to terms with being late diagnosed neurodivergent as well. Myself, I got diagnosed with combined ADHD in, when was it? November 2023. And that was after waiting for a year on on the wait list to find out. I'm currently also still waiting for an autism assessment as well, because when I was in my ADHD, what's the word? See, I'm losing words now because again, that notification thing of things popping up around your screen. Assessments, that's what I was looking for. When I was in the ADHD assessment, the assessor told me that I very clearly had autistic traits as well, that he wasn't allowed to diagnose me with because he was there to diagnose me with ADHD, not with autism. So it's been 2 years of waiting on that at the moment. And yeah, it's a very strange place to be, being late diagnosed with neurodivergence. Because I'd gone for 35 years thinking that there was something fundamentally wrong with me. Not just a little bit wrong with me, but fundamentally, as a person, there was something wrong with me, and I had no idea what that something was. Just that there was something wrong. So as a person, I was failing in some way, shape, or form. Having the diagnosis has really helped me start to unpick that, because now I know there isn't something wrong with me as a person. There isn't something wrong with me. There isn't something wrong with me fundamentally. There is something different about me fundamentally. And that's a very key difference to approach it all with. There's a book that I read when I really started looking into autism and ADHD and what this all means. I'm just going to put a quote into the chat for us. And it's by a Mancunian lass called Ellie Middleton. And she got diagnosed when she was about 21, 22. And she wrote this book Unmasked in the years following, because nobody had ever actually written something in layman's language to explain what autism and ADHD were. Because I grew up thinking ADHD was the naughty kid. The kid who was running around the classroom all the time, making a nuisance of themselves, always seeking attention in that sort of way. That autism was the person who sat there and was obsessed with numbers, and that was it. And you couldn't talk to them about anything whatsoever. They would just focus on one little thing. And it's so much more than that. And we have been let down is the word, I think, for many years, because the focus was on those naughty kids and on people who were non-verbal, high support needs autistic. And I'm not embarrassed to say one of the main things that helped me figure out that I had it was TikTok and the TikTok algorithm, because it's very good at finding things out about you and feeding you the stuff that you're interested in. And it started to feed me with things about autism and about ADHD, and things that I took for granted, or things that I thought were little quirks but were actually ADHD. And they started talking about things like, oh, my leg shakes all the time. Well, my leg shakes all the time. My leg's shaking right now. It was so bad whilst I was at university that my friends continually tried dead-legging me to stop it. With my consent, of course. Back then they weren't just doing it to be mean. But I couldn't figure out why I was doing it. Things like hyper-focusing on things. I can probably tell you the vast majority of the lore behind the Final Fantasy series of games verbatim, off the top of my head, if I was ever asked about it. Thankfully, I've also ended up in a job where I'm doing something that I had to focus on, which is using technology to help people learn. So if people ask me about tech or ask me about, how can I use something pedagogically, that's something that I can really tap into and help with. And Rachel Hayes has just said in the chat that hyperfocus is such a gift and a curse, and that's exactly what I was about to go on to. The curse side of it is if something is not in my hyperfocus, if something is something I'm not interested in at all, you'll get this, Stephen, because I'm not interested. And I won't be meaning to show that I'm not interested, but you'll be able to tell. You'll really be able to tell. And it also means I can end up going off on a tangent doing something that is much more than was ever asked for. And because I go off on that tangent and I do this thing to the nth degree, I will then burn myself out. So burnout is it's a term for when you've overdone something as somebody who's neurodiverse. So you can no longer cope with the smaller stimuli and things that are just on your periphery that are annoying you, but you're able to ignore them mostly. But they build up and they build up and they build up and they build up, and you get to a point where, for me, I just end up feeling really tired all the time. All I want to do is sleep when I hit burnout. And again, it's only relatively recently that I've realized that for me, any negative emotion I feel as tiredness. So my friends and my family will be asking, are you all right, Stephen? I've been going, no, I'm just tired. But tired could mean I'm feeling devastated about something that's that I've seen on the news. Or it could mean that I'm frustrated because I've been trying to get something sorted and I've not been able to get that thing done. It could mean that my socks have got stuck in between my toes and I've been focusing on that all day and it's really annoying me. But all I can process that as is feeling tired. And it's even worse when that comes out as me being short and snappy about something. So the person who I'm talking to, they've asked me something, usually quite innocently, and I've come back, of course it's like that. I'm not mad at them, although they think I am at that moment. It'll have been a build-up of something, or something else will have been annoying me. I'll have been trying to get my shoelace tied and not been able to, for instance, because one thing that comes alongside neurodivergence encompasses so many things. So I've got a little bit of dyspraxia as well. I will constantly be bumping into things. I'll constantly be struggling to do things like putting socks on or tying shoelaces properly. And it's challenging. I'm just looking through some of the chats that are coming through, and Danielle's asked for any tips of people who are on waiting lists putting it off and come over. I'll come back to that one in a little bit. And Becca said that diagnosed with ADHD CXA3, always been told she was intelligent and bright, but for some reason just couldn't perform in the way that it was expected. That is exactly how I was as well. And actually, one of the big things that people are finding in studies that are going on now is the gifted and talented, what was gifted and talented in the 90s and the noughties. Pretty much everybody who was on there has got neurodivergence in some way, shape, or form. And it's because we found socializing difficult. Doesn't mean that we couldn't socialize. Not everybody struggles with socializing, but socializing was difficult. Because we found all those extra things difficult, we really focused on academia. And with neurodivergence, you tend to be very good at spotting patterns and recognizing how things work, which is great when it's coming down to assessments and being tested on knowledge and stuff like that, because you can see the patterns. And even if you don't know the exact thing, you can at least see the pattern that the question's alluding to and come up with a thing. So you are very focused on being the bright one, because you are able to find things that the teachers don't think you'd be able to understand at that stage, just because you've spotted, oh, well, this has happened and this has happened. So Usually that happens after it, so that's probably what's going to happen next. So you're able to come across as very bright. And sometimes that goes across to exams, sometimes it doesn't. But there will always be a point where that recognition fails you. For me, it was at sixth form. So I breezed through my GCSEs. I came to sixth form and I was targeted to get A's at everything. And I came out with a B, a D, and 2 E's. Because I'd hit the limit of what I could just wing it by. I'd never been taught how to revise properly because I'd never had to revise properly. And I'd just sort of coasted through, and that coasting made me crash out and burn at the end. And that was a really big hit to my self-esteem at that point, because I'd put everything about myself, because I wasn't a social butterfly. I really struggled with friends. I really struggled with relationships and things. I'd put my everything into being the clever one, the academic one. And then suddenly it all crumbled. At that same point, I also I'd got through the interview stages at 17 to become an RF pilot. So you go through it at that age, and then they pay for your university after that. I got down to the final interview, and their feedback to me was that I was dull, monotonous, and boring. Now, hearing that as a 17-year-old, you can imagine how much that destroys you internally. Looking back at it now through that lens of autism, I wasn't dull, monotonous, and boring. I was autistic and panicking in a situation I wasn't comfortable in. And it's really what people don't prepare you for when you do get the diagnosis is the level of grief that comes. You do get some joy to start with, because suddenly things are making sense, but you get grief because there are so many things that were missed as a child that could have and would have fundamentally changed how you see yourself as an adult. And I'm now having to unpick all of that. I'm getting therapy and things like that to help me go through it all, which is also another fun thing about neurodivergence. The ordinary therapy methods, the CBT and things like that, don't work for us because one of the things that CBT is basically telling you to do is change your mind and change your perspective. What are autistic people famously bad at doing is changing their mind and changing their perspective. So I've finally come through the waiting lists for EMDR therapy, which is where they use eye motions to help you feel your feelings, which is something that I need. Every therapist I've been to has always told me, "Oh, you're very aware of yourself. You can tell me everything." It's like, yeah, I can tell you everything. I can tell you everything that's wrong with me. I can pinpoint all the different points in my life where anything that I've got hang-ups on come from. I can't feel my way through it because I don't know how to feel things effectively. And this EMDR is all about eye motion and feeling things by looking in places that you don't usually look with your eyes. So it teaches you how to feel. So I'm looking forward to trying that on. And yes, there might be quite a few people saying it's awful. CBT can be really good. Don't tell me at all. I'm not going to say it doesn't work, because it can work for some people. It just doesn't work for me. I know it doesn't work for quite a few neurodiverse people. For those reasons given, we have black and white thinking. We have set thinking, even if we don't recognise it. I had the possibility of starting to get diagnosed back in 2016, but I didn't do it until 2023. And that's because my friend got diagnosed with Asperger's, which is a term that we don't use anymore. That's basically people who have very low support needs as an autistic person. So that they're able to fit in with neuronormative society better than others would in the same situation. And it was called Asperger's after the doctor who coined the term, who happened to be a Nazi who experimented on children. And that's how that term came about, and that's why we don't use the term Asperger's anymore. And he pointed me to a test to do online that he did as his first thing, and it said, if you score 24 points, you definitely have it and you should talk to your doctor. I scored 23 points. So to my black and white mind, it was, oh, I didn't score 24, so I've not got it. So that delayed by almost 10 years me actually looking to see what my neurodivergence was and understand it. And actually my autism has become more pronounced since I've started treating my ADHD with Elvance tablets. So I take out tablets each day. Unbeknownst to me, I was self-medicating before that with coffee and caffeine. And it's another thing that, again, now that I have the understanding, there were signs years and years ago. I was at university when Relentless first came on the market, you know, the Relentless cans. And they came to our university and they offered us cans for free. You know, this is a new drink, come and try it and see. I had one and it made me go to sleep. And I thought, this isn't what caffeine's meant to do. Something's weird there. And I experimented a bit with caffeine and coffees and found that they all made me really sleepy and helped me fall asleep. And I just thought, oh, that's weird. The caffeine's just waking up the bit of my brain that's telling me I'm tired. That's how I looked at it. Was that it was just, oh, it's just waking up the bit of my brain that tells me I'm tired. That makes sense. And I sort of like just filed it away. But now I know that's one of the massive indicators that you have ADHD, is if caffeine has a unexpected effect on you. It should make you feel awake. It should make you feel possibly heightened anxiety. It should not make you feel sleepy. That is exactly what it shouldn't be doing. But yes, there's quite a few things going on in the chat that I'm just catching up at the moment. Mindfulness sessions, they can help sometimes. It depends how they're structured. It can be absolute hell with ADHD if it is something that you find really boring. If it is something that's really boring that you're doing, it can great. One thing I found really interesting is what's it called? When people whisper into microphones and it's meant to help you go to sleep and it's meant to help you relax. For me, it does the exact opposite. ASMR, that's it. It does the exact opposite for me. ASMR sets me right on edge. I get angry when I hear it. Because it's all mouth movements and clicking and it's like hearing somebody chewing their food out loud. It's horrible. But I know for many people, they love it and it really helps. There's a huge lucrative thing out there on ASMR. But it does really frustrate me when it comes up on my TikToks, and I'm not prepared for it. It's just there. It's like, oh my god, what's this? Why are they going for it? Oh, it's horrible. Another thing that's been mentioned is people pursuing diagnoses because they knew somebody who got diagnosed first. It's interesting that there have been some studies done over the past couple of years, and it's only at very low level at the moment. It's not really worked its way up. Somebody shared their psychology dissertation where they'd looked at how people talk to one another. And they asked the question, how comfortable does it make you feel when somebody shares a personal anecdote about whatever it is that you're talking about? And something like 80 to 90% of those with neurodivergence said it made them feel welcomed, it made them feel comfortable, and like they could become friends with them. To those who were neuronormative, it made them feel deeply, deeply uncomfortable. So straight away, you can see that those who are neuronormative and those who are neurodiverse they talk in completely different ways to one another. They respond in completely different ways. There's studies out there that says within 8 seconds of somebody who's neuronormative meeting somebody who's neurodiverse, they can tell there's something different about them. I put a post on LinkedIn about this when I first looked into it all, and the way they explained it was it's almost as though everybody speaks 2 languages at once. You've got your English or whatever language it is that you're speaking, but there's also a body language that's there as well. And amongst people who are neurotypical, that body language is just there. Everybody knows it. They do it to one another. That's what makes each other comfortable. That hidden body language is comforting everybody else around them. And until they've established a rapport through this hidden body language, they're not comfortable talking about anything in any great depth, which is why you have so much small talk and things like that, where people do a lot of small talk, then they get into deeper things. Or they'll have small talk and then they'll disperse, because whatever the body language is between them all has allowed them to know, oh, right, this isn't the right time or place to do that. People who are neurodiverse typically don't have that body language bit. We've got the speaking bit, we've got that down pat, but that hidden body language just isn't there. We don't understand it, we don't get it. We know enough of it from having seen it that we can pick up when somebody's annoyed at us, but we can't reciprocate in the body language. We'll often ask the question, and because we ask the question, we get labelled as blunt or as rude or whatever words it might be for you, because the unwritten rule is you deal with that bit through body language. You don't deal with that bit through speaking. And that's a huge difference between people. So yeah, people are saying adding your own story to show that you're understood and empathetic. Yes, that's what I do. I do that all the time. I bring my own little story in to try and show, oh yes, I've been through that, so I understand what you're saying. And for most people, they can get that, but there are a lot of people who find it very rude. And I've worked as a teacher for 5 or so years, and there were definitely very few, if any, other neurodivergent people there, and there definitely weren't any on the managerial side of things. So I just didn't fit in. I ended up bouncing off that job in the end, and leaving teaching, not because I didn't like teaching, but because I didn't like all the stuff in the background for it. Things like mandatory marking of books and having to mark at certain points for it. I could understand marking homework, I could understand marking tests, I could understand looking through it maybe once a month and putting comments. But I couldn't read my own handwriting, and I taught bottom set classes. What was the point of somebody who can't read their own handwriting writing something for kids who couldn't read? It made no sense whatsoever. And that's what it was. So yeah, it was very, very difficult. I'm glad I've found this path to remain in education, because I love education and I love pedagogy and helping people learn. That aha moment when somebody actually learns something is the best feeling in the world to see. So I love working in education. I'm glad I've found a route that accepts my neurodiversity for it. But yeah, it's something that you definitely bounce off a lot, unfortunately. And there'll be a lot of jobs where people who are neurodiverse will bounce off. We often like to seek clarity for things. Again, I'm talking in broad strokes, but it's broad strokes that hopefully can resonate with people. I will ask a lot of clarifying questions if I don't understand something, because I want to understand the why. Why are we doing this thing that we're doing? because I might have spotted we could do this thing a bit faster if we do this. And I need to understand, why are we not doing this? Why are we doing that instead? And if you have good managers, they're always open to those conversations with you. They'll talk to you about it, and you'll be able to have a good chat, and then either figure out why you're doing that way or get permission to do it the other. But if you have managers who don't get that, who are very hierarchy based, because that's another thing, neurodivergent people, again, generalizing, we understand hierarchy, we know hierarchy exists, we just don't get it. So I will often ask somebody something and then afterwards get told, why did you go and talk to that person? You should have talked to me. And then I'd have gone and talked to them about it. So, well, they're there, they're on Teams. I can just wing them a message and ask. And it's only after the fact I go, oh, maybe I should have followed the hierarchical approach for that one. But that's what it is. That's what it goes. Mike has just mentioned that his son's doing GCSEs and rails against mark schemes that are very arbitrary. And yeah, it is. I despise GCSE mark schemes, because you can give the correct answer, but if you haven't used the words that they expect in the order they expect them, you've got it wrong, which is horrible. Very, very horrible. So going back just quickly, we had that question earlier about where are we? Get there in a second. So that. Right. Tips for those who never get diagnosed with waiting lists, putting it off, and can work with. So you can, if you feel comfortable about it, you can talk to your manager about the fact that you feel that you have this diagnosis, you've self-diagnosed, here's the things for it. And they can still put things in place to help you. Having a diagnosis of autism, for instance, doesn't unlock any medication or any support. Nothing additional on top of what you could already get in place. With ADHD, it's ever so slightly different, because there are medications that can help tame the hyperfocus. I say tame because it doesn't control it, it tames it. I still get hyperfocus, but when I've had my Elvance tablet for the day, I can spread that out a little bit more. Or I can recognize when I'm going too far a bit easier. It doesn't actually stop me from doing that. So yeah, you can go down the self-diagnosis route, but there is, as somebody messaged earlier as well, there's this politicized issue at the moment on there being overdiagnosis. So you can talk with your managers about it. I would recommend talking to your doctor about it. I know it can be scary, but it's worth talking to them about it if you feel you might have it. And just ask them to pop the form in, because you can pop the form in and then forget about it, and then years down the line get invited to have an assessment on it. There are things through the NHS where you can go for your right to choose. So you can go on that right to choose providers, find one that has a shorter time, and ask your doctors to put you forward onto that as well. So I've recently done that with my autism, because we're 2 years down and I've still not got an appointment yet. So I've gone through the right to choose pathway, but it was hard. It took me a good 5 months to get the energy up to actually do it. Got the question
there's
on this.
There's quite a lot in the chat, isn't there? I'm just aware of the time.
Yeah.
And I think it'd be good to come back to some of it, wouldn't it? If we've got an opportunity.
Yeah, definitely.
And I think it's really good to hear your experiences, first of all. So thank you for sharing with us, and thank you to everyone who's been sharing in the chat. And I think it's just a really good example of how we are able to come together as a community and support each other with these conversations, to say, you're not on your own. It's not something that you have to go through on your own either. We can go through it together to support each other. So hopefully off the back of this, there is that support that we know that we have got within the Digital Accessibility Special Interest Group as well, and we can help each other. And hopefully, Stephen, if you don't mind sort of continuing to go through those questions and getting some responses to some of the things that have come up, that would be really good. I'm just aware that we've only got 15 minutes or so left, and I think it would be quite good to get some practices that we can have a little, hopefully, a discussion about as well, and people can share some ideas on practices that can help in our everyday, if that all sounds good.
Yeah, no,
so thank you.
Good to me. Yeah, I'm going to put 3 books that really helped me. I'll pop in the chat for there. But yes, if we open it up to the chat to share any ideas or things that they've got,
yes,
that'd be really good.
Yeah, fantastic. Yeah, I agree, and I think books are always brilliant. And I know personally with my ADHD, signposting is like a big thing that I'm quite good at doing. So people will say things and I think there's a book that I've got about that. There's a resource that I think will help with that. And I've got a couple of things that I think could be quite useful for people. This is just, again, it's really high level, but it might just help to encourage us to think about some of the practices and tools that you might have used. So as Stephen says, like share them in the chat. It would be fantastic for us to sort of collect those up as well. So the first area that I was thinking about was around reducing digital noise. So it might be things around like focus mode or batching your emails, setting quiet hours in your teams, or you could be using like browser tab groups as well. So an example of this could be that you use the focus mode to make sure that you have got a time set in your calendar once late morning and sort of once mid-afternoon. That means that that's when you go and check your emails. And so even small boundaries like that can create a sense of control and sort of build that habit in. The second area that I was thinking about was externalizing your working memory. So it could be tools like Microsoft To Do or OneNote to get your audio notes in, or pinning your messages as well. That's something that I use quite a lot. Time blocking to help you get tasks out of your head, and then you can just sort of like get them into something reliable. Someone that I know starts their day. He records he goes on a walk with his dogs, and he records his audio notes to plan the day. And actually doing it that way around means that he's not distracted by notifications that are pinging up and messages that are coming through. He just knows exactly what it is that he needs to get done to do that day, because he's remembered to do that while he's been out on his walk. So next up, I've got the area of reducing sensory overload. So this might include using dark mode. It could be high contrast settings as well. There's quite a lot of things there that we know about, but maybe we don't use. Blue light filters and reading and immersive modes. Sometimes I like to listen to things instead of reading them. A student actually shared with me how much they use dark mode and how much it's made an impact on them. It's really significantly reduced headaches. It's helped them to focus for longer as well. So they're all usually built into all the systems that we use now, which is brilliant. The fourth area of focus that I've got in is focus support. So Pomodoro style timers, window focus sessions, apps like Forest, if you might have heard of before, where you can grow a little tree. And actually someone I know that has ADHD uses Forest as a stopping cue. So rather than setting it for a project, they use it to say, right, when this tree has finished growing, it's a reminder to me to pause, to breathe, to move, to get some water. So things like this can be really helpful for us. And again, speech to text while walking, doing something a bit different can help you to refocus in on what you are needing to do. So the last area that we've got is on emotional and energy regulation. And I think this is such a big area, and we've talked quite a lot about this in this session as well, and how important it is. So things like having blocking in transitions between meetings, planning tasks by your energy rather than urgency. So I know that's easier said than done, but it might be that you have noticed that you've got 2 or 3 meetings that have been scheduled in for that morning. So you know, but in the afternoon, you're not going to want to have any more meetings. Your energy levels aren't going to be high enough to be able to get that work done. So keeping that in mind when you're making those plans, and using accessibility plugins and shortcuts and soundscapes as well can be quite helpful. I know that I'm a musician, so music can help me, but I've got other friends that they need silence. They work best with no noise because they will get distracted, whereas I need something to cover up the noises around me, and it helps me to focus. I know people that have had 2-minute sort of transition rituals. So that when a notification goes off, they will stand up, they'll drink some water, they'll look at a plant. And once they've built that in as a habit, it really makes a big difference for them. So I just wanted to touch briefly on this as well. And Stephen has alluded to this as well in what he's been talking about today and sharing with us.
I'm guessing with that one, she went
Not sure what happened to Alice there.
Yeah, she'll have gone to hit share and hit end call instead because it's right next to each other. So hopefully she'll be looking. There we go. There we go.
We're back.
Jolly good.
I've just got this one last bit to touch on. Hopefully that's all. all up on the screen again now. But yes, really this is about supporting each other and having strategies in place for your teams. So it might be that you've joined us today and you aren't neurodivergent, and this has been a real opportunity for you to sort of hear about things that others are experiencing. It might be that it has raised a few things for you and you think, how can I make some changes? So it could be things around predictable communication patterns or reducing unnecessary systems or the complexity of the systems, offering different options, asynchronous options as an example, and moving away from that sort of constant urgency, which obviously in a dream world we would all love to have. But let's just imagine a request has come through by email. So in one version, the email arrives, there's no subject clarity, there's a vague deadline, and follow-up messages have been, there's nothing there to sort of see how you can take that forward. And in the second version, the subject line says action by Friday, the task's really clear, there's no expectation of an immediate response, and the work's exactly the same, but the cognitive load isn't, and that can be helpful for everyone. But the difference, it really does matter far more than people realise, and that can make such a difference for people when they're trying to go through the tasks that they need to for that day. So finally, this is just a slide that's got all the tools on that I've mentioned, and a couple of extras. So you don't need to explore them right now this second. We will get this sent out to you with the recordings, along with any other resources that we've talked about. But even one small change can make a real noticeable difference to how your digital day can feel. So this is just one last reflection for our last couple of minutes. What small digital change could you make this week to reduce overwhelm for yourself or for your colleagues as well? So it's been wonderful being able to see the chat going all the way through this session. And it's nice to sort of think about, as we talked about earlier, the support that we can give to each other. So maybe it's a chance for us to just think about ourselves and what we can do to help as we go forward into this year. But that is everything from us in terms of slides and things.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for what has been quite moving testimony. Thank you. And I think the engagement we've seen in the chat with everyone here, really fantastic session. Thank you so much for your candor and honesty. There's one question in the Q&A. I wonder whether Stephen would be able to pick up on that. And I have a couple of questions that I've been wondering about. What do you think, to what extent is it undiagnosed amongst our kind of HE population, and what sort of incidence is there? And is our HE colleagues, do we tend to find a higher incidence amongst us? I have a suspicion we may.
I've always found in my line of work, it seems to have a higher instance. That's in learning technology specifically. But that's just anecdotal. I wouldn't be able to give any evidence back for that. We do have a question, like you say, from Mike Wold. What happens to people who think they are different, but assessments don't show they are neurodiverse? People vary in many ways. Won't there be people on both sides of any assessment threshold? So if somebody finds reading and or writing difficult, but is told they aren't dyslexic from an assessment, what happens to them and how does this make them feel? Aren't there serious issues in dividing people into binary, neurodiverse, neurotypical categories? The thresholds are there because it is a spectrum that everybody's on. Everyone is somewhere on this same spectrum. You only get the label of autistic or ADHD or dyscalculia, dyslexic, whichever, if you are spiking in multiple areas on it. That doesn't mean that that person shouldn't get any support for the things that they're struggling with. But as I said to start with, there isn't really any support out there anyway for those of us who are ADHD and autistic. I get some medications for my ADHD. That's all that they've really given me, is that. Anything else that I've got, I've had to go and advocate for myself. So if you are struggling with things, you should be advocating for that support. The diagnosis is just effectively just a word that you can use to help you understand where you're from with it and what you've got with it. And also you will find, given the politicized nature of neurodiversity at the moment, there will be some doctors and consultants who are very strict to the DSM-5 criteria for it. That was written in 2013. There's been over a decade of further research since then that has shown that there are other things, such as pathological demand avoidance. That's a massive thing that people are becoming more aware of, particularly in children. But my daughter's going through the neurodivergent pathway at the moment, and one of the things they say right from the start is we don't recognise PDA as a thing because it's not written in the DSM-5. So I'd say seek second opinions, but also find the support that you need and get that in place, because that's what you have to do anyway. If you are neurodiverse, you have to find that support yourself.
Well, we're coming up to 2 o'clock, so we're going to have to wind the session up. I think we could probably go on for another couple of hours there with all sorts of interesting stuff, and certainly the conversation that's been brewing in the chat's been fantastic. There's obviously a lot of people that relate to what you've been talking about, Stephen. So thank you very much. So should we leave it there? We'll be back next month for another webinar, and I'll post some details on the various lists and so on. We'll see you all next time. Thanks again.
See you all again.
Thank you very much. Take care.